There's a moment in every human life when the noise fades, not because the world becomes quiet, but because its explanations stop working. The beliefs that once guided you begin to feel thin. The promises you were told to trust start sounding rehearsed. And beneath the routines, beneath the distractions, beneath the constant motion, a question begins to surface, slowly, quietly, and then all at once. What if life has no answers? Not answers hidden somewhere, waiting to be discovered. Not answers locked behind effort or suffering, but no answers at all. Modern humanity is built on the assumption that life is a problem to be solved. From childhood, we are trained to believe that everything has a reason, a purpose, a final explanation. We are taught that confusion is temporary, that doubt is a phase, and that clarity is the reward for endurance. Meaning, we are told, is inevitable. Yet the longer we live, the more fragile this promise becomes. We look around and see intelligent people suffering without reason. We see cruelty rewarded, honesty punished, and chaos dressed up as order. We see systems that claim to serve humanity quietly consuming it. And when we ask why, the answers grow vague, symbolic, or silent. This silence is not accidental. Human beings have always feared it. Silence means no authority is speaking. No final voice is guiding the story. And without a voice, there is no script, only choice, uncertainty, and responsibility. So we create meaning. We invent gods, nations, ideologies, destinies, moral hierarchies, and narratives powerful enough to hold back the terror of not knowing. These stories are not always lies, but they are often shields, structures built not to reveal reality, but to make it bearable. When meaning is present, suffering feels justified. When answers exist, pain feels temporary. When purpose is guaranteed, endurance feels noble. But when those answers begin to dissolve, something unsettling happens inside the human mind. Anxiety replaces certainty. Restlessness replaces faith. And the question becomes impossible to ignore. What if life is not a puzzle meant to be solved, but a test designed to be endured, without instructions, without grading criteria, and without a final explanation? This idea feels dangerous because it removes the safety net. It suggests that effort does not guarantee reward, that suffering does not promise growth, that morality is not enforced by the universe itself. And yet, deep down, many people sense it is true. We live as though answers exist, but we behave as though they do not. We chase meaning obsessively while acting with quiet despair. We demand purpose from the world while numbing ourselves to survive it. The modern world offers endless information, yet very little wisdom. Endless voices, yet no final authority. Endless explanations, yet no satisfying conclusion. The result is a strange psychological tension, a species desperate for meaning living in a reality that refuses to confirm it. This tension is not new. It has haunted humanity across centuries. But today it is amplified, because the stories that once held society together, religion, tradition, shared moral frameworks, are no longer unquestioned. And what replaces them is not truth, but noise. We scroll. We consume. We argue. We perform certainty. Anything to avoid the quiet moment when the question returns. What if there is no answer coming? The human mind is not built to tolerate unanswered questions for long. Psychologically, uncertainty triggers the same systems as danger. When we do not understand what is happening, the brain searches for patterns, narratives, and explanations, anything to restore a sense of control. This is why conspiracy theories flourish. This is why ideologies harden. This is why people cling to certainty even when it contradicts reality. An uncomfortable answer feels safer than no answer at all. Societies understand this instinct deeply. Power structures rely on it. Every civilization that has endured has done so by offering explanations, stories about why the world is the way it is, who is in control, and what is expected of you. These stories reduce existential anxiety. They tell people where they belong, what to hope for, and what to fear. But there is a hidden cost. When meaning is supplied externally, it becomes a tool. When answers are centralized, they can be controlled. And when people stop questioning, they become manageable. The absence of meaning, then, is not just philosophically disturbing, it is politically dangerous. A person who realizes that life offers no guaranteed answers cannot be easily pacified. They cannot be promised salvation, destiny, or inevitability. They must confront reality directly. This is why societies often pathologize doubt, why those who question too deeply are labeled pessimistic, unstable, or dangerous, why certainty is rewarded and ambiguity is punished. Yet the most profound truths rarely arrive with clarity. They arrive as discomfort. They arrive as a feeling that something fundamental does not add up, that the explanations feel rehearsed, that the narratives feel incomplete, that behind the elaborate systems of meaning, there is something cold, vast, and indifferent, not evil, not malicious, just silent. The universe does not explain itself. It does not justify suffering. It does not promise resolution. Events unfold without concern for human expectations. And this indifference cuts deeper than cruelty ever could. Because cruelty implies intention. Indifference implies nothing is listening. This realization creates what many experience as a quiet internal rebellion, a psychological refusal to accept comforting illusions, a resistance not against society, but against false reassurance. It is here, at this precise moment, that many people turn away. They retreat into distraction, belief, or denial. Others become cynical, numbed, or bitter. Some mistake the absence of meaning for permission to destroy. But a rare few do something else. They stay. They remain present with the discomfort. They refuse easy answers. They allow the question to exist without resolution. And in doing so, they cross an invisible threshold, from seeking meaning to confronting reality. This is the moment where philosophy stops being abstract and becomes personal, where the question is no longer theoretical, but intimate. If life has no answers, if suffering is not guaranteed meaning, if justice is not cosmic, then how should one live? This question does not arrive gently. It arrives like pressure, like standing on unstable ground with no map and no guide. And it demands something most belief systems never do. Honesty. Not optimism. Not hope. Not despair. Honesty. Soon, the world would encounter a man who refused to escape this question. A man who did not offer salvation, meaning, or transcendence. Only clarity. Only defiance. Only the courage to live without answers. But before his name is spoken, the ground must be prepared. Because what he discovered was not comforting. It was liberating and unbearable. And once seen, it cannot be unseen. Albert Camus did not begin with philosophy. He began with exposure. Exposure to poverty, to illness, to injustice that did not announce itself as evil, but as normal. He was born in 1913 in colonial Algeria, into a world divided so cleanly that no explanation could make it moral. His father died in the First World War before Camus could remember his face. His mother was nearly illiterate, partially deaf, and emotionally distant, not from cruelty, but from exhaustion. Silence was not a metaphor in Camus' life. It was a daily condition. As a child, he learned early that effort did not guarantee reward. Intelligence did not guarantee opportunity, and virtue did not guarantee protection. These were not philosophical conclusions. They were observations. Then came tuberculosis. At a young age, Camus was forced to confront his own mortality. His body, fragile and unreliable, reminded him constantly that life did not wait for readiness. Illness interrupted ambition. Death hovered without explanation. There was no lesson attached to suffering, only endurance. This confrontation with fragility would never leave him. While Europe debated ideals and abstractions, Camus experienced reality as something blunt and unromantic. The world did not explain itself. It simply happened. And the more honestly he observed it, the less convinced he became that existence followed a moral script. Later, as war consumed Europe, Camus found himself in the French Resistance, not because he believed history was progressing toward justice, but because injustice demanded opposition. This distinction mattered deeply to him. He did not fight because he believed the universe was moral. He fought because silence felt worse. World War II exposed something Camus could not ignore. Intelligent, civilized societies were capable of mechanized cruelty on a scale previously unimaginable. Entire populations were sacrificed in the name of ideologies that promised meaning, destiny, and historical necessity. And yet, when the war ended, no revelation followed. No cosmic justice corrected the damage. The dead stayed dead. The survivors were expected to move on. This absence of resolution haunted him. It was here, between suffering and silence, that Camus articulated what he would later call the absurd. Not as a theory, but as a confrontation. The absurd was not the claim that life is meaningless. It was the collision between two undeniable facts: the human hunger for meaning and the universe's refusal to provide it. We ask questions. The universe does not answer. We seek purpose. Reality offers process. We demand justice. Events unfold without regard for fairness. The absurd is born in that gap. Most people, Camus observed, could not tolerate this tension, so they escaped it. Some through religion, surrendering responsibility to divine narratives. Others through ideology, dissolving themselves into historical missions or political myths. Some through nihilism, rejecting meaning entirely. And some through literal suicide, the ultimate refusal to continue the test. Camus rejected all of these paths. Religion, he believed, offered comfort at the cost of honesty. Ideology replaced truth with certainty. Nihilism disguised despair as clarity. And suicide, while understandable, ended the confrontation rather than facing it. Instead, Camus proposed something more difficult: to live without appeal. To accept that life offers no final explanation, and to live anyway. This was not optimism. It was defiance. Camus' most radical idea was not that life lacked meaning. It was that meaninglessness did not excuse surrender. He argued that once a person recognizes the absurd, they stand at a crossroads. One path leads to escape, faith, ideology, illusion. The other leads to resignation, apathy, cynicism, withdrawal. But Camus insisted on a third path, one few are willing to take: rebellion. Not revolution in the political sense, but an internal stance. A refusal to lie to oneself. A commitment to live fully, consciously, and ethically in a world that offers no guarantees. This rebellion begins with clarity. No false hope. No cosmic promises. No belief that suffering will be redeemed by some future revelation. Life, Camus insisted, is not a problem to be solved but a condition to be experienced. This idea terrified his contemporaries. Many accused him of pessimism. Others accused him of nihilism. Both were wrong. Camus did not deny value. He denied inevitability. He did not say life was worthless. He said it was fragile, temporary, and unjustified by design. And it was precisely this lack of justification that gave human choice its weight. If nothing is guaranteed, then every act matters more, not less. If justice is not cosmic, then it must be human. If meaning is not given, then it must be lived. Camus' philosophy stripped away excuses. One could no longer blame destiny. One could no longer hide behind history. One could no longer claim obedience to higher truth. Responsibility returned to the individual. This made Camus dangerous, not because he called for chaos, but because he undermined absolute certainty. Power structures thrive on belief in inevitability. Nations require myths. Ideologies require faith. Leaders require obedience, justified by narratives larger than the individual. Camus offered none of these comforts. He refused to endorse totalitarian ideologies, even when they claimed moral superiority. He criticized violence justified by future utopias. He rejected the idea that ends could redeem means. For this, he was isolated. Former allies turned against him. Certainty prefers loyalty over honesty. Camus accepted the cost. In his writings, the figure of Sisyphus became his most enduring symbol. Condemned to push a boulder up a mountain only for it to roll back down eternally, Sisyphus embodied the human condition stripped of illusion. There was no progress, no resolution, no reward. And yet, Camus imagined him happy, not because his task was meaningful, but because it was his. Because in accepting the absurd fully, Sisyphus reclaimed ownership of his existence. The gods could control the outcome, but not his consciousness. This was Camus' quiet revolution: to live without answers, without hope of final resolution, and without surrender. To find dignity not in success, but in persistence. To resist not with rage, but with lucidity. Albert Camus did not solve life's mystery. He did something more unsettling. He taught people how to look directly at it. And once someone does, they are never quite the same. The illusion cracks. The stories weaken. And the question returns, no longer as fear, but as challenge. How do you live when no one is watching the universe keep score? That question would echo far beyond Camus' lifetime, into a modern world drowning in narratives, certainty, and manufactured meaning. And it would demand an answer not from philosophy, but from psychology itself. The absurd is not frightening because it is abstract. It is frightening because it is personal. It does not arrive as a philosophical idea. It arrives as a psychological disturbance. A subtle crack in the stories that once held reality together. A moment when effort stops feeling proportional to outcome. When suffering stops feeling instructional. When justice stops feeling inevitable. The human mind is not designed to live comfortably in this space. From an evolutionary perspective, the brain is a prediction machine. It survives by detecting patterns, assigning causes, and anticipating outcomes. Certainty is not a luxury, it is a survival mechanism. When the brain cannot predict, it experiences threat. And when threat persists without resolution, anxiety becomes chronic. This is why unanswered questions feel unbearable. We crave closure. We want beginnings and endings, causes and effects, villains and heroes. These structures calm the nervous system. They reassure us that reality is coherent and controllable. Even negative explanations, blame, guilt, punishment, can feel comforting if they restore a sense of order. The absurd destroys this order. It suggests that pain may not teach, that loss may not transform, that effort may dissolve into nothing. And this realization does something deeply unsettling. It removes the psychological bargain we unconsciously make with life. Suffer now, and it will make sense later. Endure, and you will be rewarded. Obey, and the world will justify you. When this bargain collapses, people experience what psychologists call existential anxiety. Not fear of something specific, but fear of uncertainty itself. A background dread that cannot be pointed at or resolved. To escape this feeling, the mind reaches for armor. Belief systems serve this function. They offer explanations where none are evident. They transform randomness into destiny and suffering into purpose. Social identities do the same. They tell individuals who they are, what they stand for, and where they belong, reducing ambiguity through affiliation. Ideologies go further. They promise historical necessity. They claim that events are moving toward a final resolution, and that individual suffering is justified by a greater future good. These frameworks are psychologically powerful because they outsource meaning. Responsibility dissolves into narrative. Doubt becomes disloyalty, and uncertainty is reframed as weakness. But there is a cost. When meaning is externalized, thinking becomes conditional. Questions are tolerated only if they do not threaten the story. And those who question too deeply are no longer seen as curious, but as dangerous. This is why societies often punish existential doubt, not because it is wrong, but because it destabilizes. A person who no longer believes suffering is meaningful is harder to motivate. A person who no longer believes justice is guaranteed is harder to pacify. A person who no longer trusts narratives becomes unpredictable. So doubt is framed as pathology. Skepticism is negativity. Honesty is cynicism. Yet Camus understood something most avoided, that the absurd does not destroy meaning. It exposes how fragile our psychological scaffolding truly is. When a person fully confronts the absurd, something irreversible happens. The illusions weaken. The stories lose their grip. And what remains is a raw awareness that cannot be delegated or denied. This is where Camus' idea of rebellion becomes psychological rather than philosophical. Rebellion, in this sense, is not rage against the world. It is resistance against self-deception, a refusal to anesthetize consciousness with comforting lies, a commitment to remain awake in a reality that offers no reassurance. This state demands an unusual kind of courage. Without cosmic justice, there is no external validation. Without destiny, there is no script to follow. Without final answers, there is no authority to obey. Every decision becomes heavier. Psychologically, This can feel exhausting. There is no one to blame. Not God, not history, not fate. Responsibility collapses inward. Choices are no longer justified by inevitability, but by values that must be chosen repeatedly. Without certainty, they are correct. This is why most people retreat. Some retreat into cynicism, convincing themselves that nothing matters, so they will not have to care. Others retreat into distraction, numbing awareness through consumption, noise, and constant stimulation. And many retreat into moral absolutism, clinging harder to beliefs precisely because doubt feels intolerable. Camus rejected all three. He believed cynicism was just despair in disguise, distraction was avoidance, and absolutism was fear masquerading as conviction. None of these paths, he argued, respected reality as it is. To live with the absurd is to live exposed. It means acknowledging that you may act ethically and still lose, that you may love deeply and still suffer, that your efforts may never be recognized, and choosing to act anyway, not because of reward, but because of integrity. This form of rebellion is quiet, invisible, and profoundly destabilizing to systems built on certainty. A person who lives this way cannot be easily manipulated by promises of salvation or threats of meaninglessness. They do not need history to be on their side. They do not require validation from narratives larger than themselves. They act because they choose to. This does not eliminate anxiety. It transforms it. The fear of uncertainty becomes a background condition rather than a paralyzing force. Meaning is no longer something to be discovered. It is something enacted, moment by moment. And here is the most disturbing implication. If the absurd is unbearable, it may not be because reality is broken, but because our psychological expectations are. Perhaps we were never promised meaning by the universe. Perhaps we were the ones who demanded it. The absurd, then, is not an error in existence. It is a mirror, reflecting our need for control, our fear of responsibility, and our discomfort with freedom. To see this clearly is unsettling, but it is also the beginning of something rare, lucidity. And in a world saturated with narratives, certainty, and manufactured meaning, lucidity may be the most radical act of all. The modern world, however, has found new ways to prevent it, ways far more subtle than religion or ideology, and far more effective. The world Camus observed in the 20th century was already testing human endurance. Today, that test has multiplied. It is everywhere, not in the obvious cruelties of war or famine, but in subtler forms, mass media, curated realities, constant narratives that shape perception and behavior. Modern life is engineered to deliver answers before the question is asked. It promises clarity, purpose, and moral guidance, yet it rarely offers truth. It pacifies the anxious mind with patterns, stories, and explanations that feel coherent, but are often constructed to control rather than enlighten. Social media, for instance, creates an illusion of engagement and understanding. Outrage cycles dominate attention, assigning moral victories and defeats in rapid succession. Ideological warfare thrives online, providing the feeling of action without responsibility. Consumer culture reinforces the notion that fulfillment is attainable through acquisition. Every system promises that your choices matter, but only within the boundaries it defines. The effect is psychologically profound. Humans are pattern-seeking creatures. We are trained to respond to narratives, whether historical, ideological, or commercial, as if they were inherent truths. And the more we rely on externally constructed meaning, the less we confront the absence of intrinsic answers. This is the ultimate test of the absurd. Camus' rebellion, once an intellectual and ethical stance, becomes a daily, psychological challenge. The refusal to outsource meaning, the refusal to accept comforting lies, and the conscious decision to perceive reality as it is, indifferent, chaotic, and unresolved. It is the quiet defiance of living with awareness, resisting the seduction of simplified explanations, moral absolutes, and ideological certainty. Outrage is easy. Certainty is easy. Following the instructions of a narrative handed to you is easy. But living with conscious choice in a world that offers no guarantees is difficult. It is uncomfortable. It is disorienting. It forces continuous reflection, constant adjustment, and the recognition that most of what society presents as truth is performative, constructed, and designed to pacify rather than illuminate. Yet, paradoxically, this difficulty is liberating. To act without expecting reward from the universe, to pursue ethical action without cosmic justification, to exist without external validation. These are forms of autonomy that cannot be taken away. They do not require approval, allegiance, or belief in a system larger than oneself. They require only honesty, lucidity, and courage. Camus understood that life's test is not about outcomes. It is about presence. It is about engagement with reality without retreat, even when the answers we crave remain inaccessible. And in the modern world, this test has never been more acute. The bombardment of curated meaning, moral judgment, and manufactured narratives is relentless. Choosing to remain conscious in this environment is a form of rebellion few recognize, and even fewer practice consistently. Consider the ways in which the modern environment simulates certainty. News cycles present stories with definitive heroes and villains, yet the context is often incomplete. Political narratives divide and assign blame with precision, but the consequences are obscured. Algorithms determine the information we see, filtering reality into versions that confirm our beliefs. Even social validation is monetized, transforming approval into a measure of constructed significance. All of these mechanisms function as a kind of soft governance. They stabilize populations by offering the illusion of understanding, satisfaction, and moral order. But for anyone aware of the absurd, they are also distractions, masking the fundamental uncertainty of existence. Camus' quiet rebellion in this context is a refusal to participate in these illusions. It is choosing to see patterns without assuming they are designed for moral or existential guidance. It is choosing to act ethically without expecting the universe to approve. It is refusing to confuse noise with truth, spectacle with significance, and appearances with reality. This rebellion is internal, silent, and profoundly countercultural. It does not announce itself. It does not seek recognition. It does not require ideology. Yet in its quiet insistence on autonomy and conscious awareness, it embodies the spirit of the absurd. Living this way is not comfortable. It demands vigilance. It forces recognition that much of what society offers as meaningful is arbitrary. It requires one to continuously ask, am I acting because this is right, or because I am following instructions crafted by forces outside myself? Am I living consciously, or am I reacting to noise, distraction, and manufactured meaning? And herein lies the final lesson Camus leaves for the modern thinker. Meaning is not discovered, imposed, or granted. It is enacted. It is lived. It is chosen moment by moment, decision by decision, in a world that offers no guarantees and no final judgment. If life is a test without answers, then the ultimate challenge is not intellectual. It is ethical, psychological, and existential. It is the courage to live with awareness in the face of indifference, to act honestly when outcomes are unknowable, to embrace responsibility when excuses are plentiful. This is the enduring relevance of Camus today. His philosophy is not a guidebook. It is a mirror, reflecting the discomfort we feel when we recognize the absence of predetermined meaning. And it is a provocation, challenging each of us to answer a question more demanding than any ideology. Can we live authentically in a world that refuses to confirm our expectations? There is no universal solution, no framework to ensure clarity, no cosmic justice to reward insight. What remains is personal, immediate, relentless. To live with courage in a meaningless world is to become your own measure. It is to inhabit every moment with responsibility, to confront uncertainty without fleeing, and to reclaim autonomy over the only life you are guaranteed, the one you are living now. If life truly is a test without answers, then the question posed to every individual is simple, yet terrifying. Will you endure it honestly, consciously, and fully? Or will you surrender to the comforting illusions around you? Camus does not tell us the answer. He only insists we see the question and choose to live with it.